So someone wanted to know a little bit about ocular versus neurosyphilis, and how is that different from the tertiary, and how long would it take to get the tertiary? And these terms are very confusing, and so I think it's an excellent question. The tertiary is what we refer to as the stage. And so the stages of syphilis: primary, secondary, latent, and tertiary. And these stages normally occur on a timeline. So that's why the stage is like a time-dependent thing. So when you acquire the primary infection with the chancre, in that stage, we can't test you with the blood test yet because that requires time for the antibodies. So that requires dark field microscopy and scraping. However, after about 6 weeks, we're going to be able to test you with an RPR or VDRL or a treponemal test, FTA, MHETP, or TPPA, or syphilis IgG, something like that. And in the secondary phase is when people get the rash and the uveitis. And then, amazingly, the syphilis can go latent. And it can go latent early, less than a year, or late. So you can have early, latent, and late latent. And then tertiary is the final stage: cardiac, the gumma, aortitis, and the neurologic manifestations: tabes dorsalis, Argyll-Robertson pupil, tertiary neurosyphilis. But tertiary is not the same as neurosyphilis, and that's where the confusion occurs. You can get ocular syphilis, and by extension neurosyphilis, in this secondary stage. It does not require the tertiary, which normally occurs decades later, 10 years, 30 years later. That's the tertiary. That's a stage. The clinical can happen at any time. And that means you could literally be 6 weeks in from your syphilis and have neurosyphilis or ocular syphilis. In the old days, we try and divide this with a line, saying that if you were in front of this line, that was ocular syphilis, and you were behind this line, that was neurosyphilis. But the CDC really just says the whole thing is one. So if you have uveitis, anterior or posterior, optic neuritis, vitreitis, retinitis, meningitis, encephalitis, doesn't matter. If any ocular finding, you're going to have a lumbar puncture plus the neurosyphilis regimen, intravenous penicillin. So you have to treat ocular syphilis like neurosyphilis. So in answer to the question, when does the tertiary come? Decades later. But please don't confuse tertiary and neuro, which can happen anytime. And ocular is neuro, which means lumbar puncture and intravenous penicillin.